When I started in Miami in fall of 2019, I had no direction of where I wanted to go with my life. I started as a microbiology major. The COVID-19 pandemic came months later, and the classes got really rough. The labs got really rough. Got to the point that I can't do this anymore. Around the time the COVID-19 pandemic started, that's when I discovered public health education. Public health education spoke to me because I'd be able to help communities impacted by issues. And I got to focus on diseases, which I went to for microbiology, but microbiology focused more on the mechanisms of actions of microbes. Being able to help people with these diseases interested me even more. One of the diseases that spoke to me is HIV. As a gay man myself, seeing how queer men are dehumanized, stigmatized, and marginalized for having HIV, and also have those same issues because they are queer, spoke to me and it made me want to help bring change to how we perceive queerness and how we perceive HIV. The CDC found in the United States that the highest rates of new HIV cases in this country are those 13 to 24, 25 to 34, Black African American, and men who have sex with men, or MSM. But those are not mutually exclusive. Imagine the stories a 25-year-old gay Black man would have. They would be stigmatized by racism, by homophobia, for having HIV, and there are many other institutional structures that would marginalize a person like him. The CDC also found that two-thirds of new HIV cases, or what they call an epidemiology incident, are MSM in this country. So, a little history about the HIV/AIDS epidemic in the United States. It started around the early 1980s. Doctors have noticed an increase in cases in major cities of conditions such as Kaposi's sarcoma and pneumocystis pneumonia. Those cases, they soon realized that this is because of immunodeficiency. They started calling this trend gay-related immune deficiency because the most common groups they saw this in were gay men and injectable drug users. Obviously, that stigmatizes gay people from the get-go. Later on, as a response to this epidemic, bathhouses in major cities such as New York City and San Francisco were closed. This also stigmatizes gay people. One of my participants at a focus group I'll talk about later mentioned that it reflects the notion that the only way they thought to combat HIV was for gay men to not have sex, stigmatizing of the get-go. Later on, we see more protests and more people become AIDS activists. They protested governmental inaction in response to the epidemic, and these protesters included gay men, other queer men, and people with HIV or AIDS. Also, we have the Lesbian Blood Sisters, who were an important group in LGBT culture in the 80s and 90s, and they nursed gay men dying of AIDS. Several celebrities you may have heard of have died of AIDS-related complications. These are including, but not limited to, popular artist Keith Haring, Queen frontman Freddie Mercury, Ryan White, who was a teenager who got AIDS from a blood transfusion, and as a result of that, he faced stigmatization and discrimination in his school and in his community, and became a national news story. He would later die of AIDS. Eazy-E, who was a member of the hip-hop collective NWA. Tennis player Arthur Ashe also is another example. Definitely heard of. Several studies have been done, including a study in 2015 by Oldenburg and colleagues, and a study in 2019 by Valdessari and colleagues. They found that MSM are less likely to have open discussions with their healthcare providers on HIV and STIs in general. This is very problematic because healthcare providers are the ones who prescribe treatment. They prescribe prevention. Prevention being pre-exposure prophylaxis. There's also post-exposure prophylaxis if you get exposed to HIV. And then there's also antiretroviral therapy, or ART. ART is what you take when you have HIV to reduce the viral load, with the goal of being untransmissible, because then you can continue sexual contact. The UNAIDS has a goal of ending the HIV/AIDS pandemic by 2030. But if we're not having these discussions in our communities with our healthcare providers, then how in the world are we going to address ending this pandemic effectively? To investigate this problem, my research assistant and I conducted a focus group. We found 4 people in the Midwest, aged 18 to 35, and we had a focus group with them through Zoom. Here is a little table of some of their characteristics. So we need to ask, How can engaging in dialogue help break HIV stigma and reduce cases? And that was what we'll be focused on through discussion, dialogue, and catharsis. One of my participants, Jay, a 19-year-old, he reflected on a scenario through a case study approach of the focus group. And in that case study, an individual took PrEP, got off of it, and got HIV through sexual contact when he was off of it. He shared, and I quote, "If we were to treat any other person who had a disease like that, it would be considered negative or messed up. This reflects the stigma that is present in our society. We have been dehumanizing people with HIV to the point that we don't see them as human. Friends and family are often who we go to first, but all are not supportive." In another scenario from the focus group, one of my participants, C, reflected on a scenario where a person in the scenario did not feel supported by their friend. They felt judged, they felt stigmatized. In response, he shared that ultimately he would have to leave his friends for the benefit of his mental health and wellness. Thankfully, I have my older brother. My older brother is a gay man in his late 20s. We have engaged in text discussions on pre-exposure prophylaxis, HIV prevention, and treatment. Given his experiences as a gay man and the fact that he is 5 years older than me, a little over 5 years older than me, I have been able to feel more comfortable discussing with my healthcare provider to start discussions about PrEP when the moment is right. And I thank him for that, because even without just my research, I feel like I would not have been able to do this. Healthcare providers are ultimately who we want to have these discussions with. But obviously, for several reasons, people feel afraid to discuss medication with their healthcare provider. That's why I say having discussions with your friends and family, the most accessible members of your community, is how you practice for these discussions with your healthcare provider. They ultimately get you more comfortable having these discussions, and that is through catharsis. Catharsis can essentially be thought of as the releasing of emotions through talking. Being able to talk about things you've held in, things that have been suppressed, allow you to release the feelings of that, and it feels very gratifying. Have you ever told something you've been holding in for so long, and you finally tell someone, you reveal it, and it's felt so great? That is catharsis. Being able to feel that gratifying feeling can further cause you to have further discussion. And that's why I say discussion and dialogue and catharsis are systemic. The systems have parts where each part benefits each other, and without that part, the system would not work. Discussion and dialogue are systemic. You need initial discussion and dialogue to be able to feel that gratifying feeling from catharsis. And then you need catharsis to be able to engage in further discussion and dialogue. The cycle continues and continues and continues. The more of these we go through, the more we can start addressing HIV/AIDS and ending the pandemic by 2030. In conclusion, if we want to end the HIV/AIDS pandemic worldwide by 2030, not just among MSM, but in all communities, we need to talk more about the institutional, systematic structures that cause increases in HIV in the first place. Thank you.